Good morning, afternoon, evening, guys. Today I'm really excited. I've got a really special guest on the show. Someone whose work I've admired for quite a while now. I've also had a lot of friends recommend his work to me as well. And it kind of ties in with the stuff that I talk about on this channel in terms of the metaphysical and going into those realms. So welcome to the podcast, Steve Richards from holographic-kinetics.com. I know it's early there, mate. Thanks for agreeing to do this at such a time.
And that's no problem. It's usually I'm up around 4 in the morning, so it's only 6. Plenty of time.
Wow, 4, definitely an early riser then. But well needed over there at the moment. You guys are at the front line of this battering ram of the system at the moment, aren't you? The things they're trying to push through there. So I guess
excuse me,
your work's needed more than ever.
Especially in the healing part of things. Although we really don't do the healing. The person does all the healing. They are the creator of their reality, so it's just assisting them to make their own changes. But our system's designed to totally get you off track.
Yeah, and I think it's an important thing to mention because, there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of raising awareness and, the conspiratory side and stuff like that, but they're kind of bypassing the healing. And when you think about it, the world is probably an expression of us in many ways, and many of us are carrying around, unhealed traumas from this time and previous lifetimes. So kind of makes sense to start with ourselves in that respect.
That's correct. And the most part I find people really don't understand, because the program is taking place through the last, let's say, 1,000 years. Our culture itself was around for 60,000 years before white men arrived. It survived very comfortably. It never went without anything because everything was provided by nature. And our culture for that 60,000 years, it learned to acknowledge the spirit of every living thing, whether it be a tree, a rock, a plant, everything's alive. And the life form essence that gives it life is that spark of life, is the spirit. Now, when the spirit leaves the tree is dead. When the spirit leaves the grass, it's dead. When it leaves a cockroach, it's dead. When it leaves a human, they're dead. But the spirit keeps moving on. It just takes different vehicles. But it's actually moving through what I call the octaves of time. In other words, it comes through the firmament, the gases, the liquid, the rocks, the plankton, the plant life, insect life, animal life, and the human life. It's evolving constantly and learning different experiences. And then each stage it goes through, again, octaves, and it'll pass through the lowest level to the highest level of those and transmutes. If you go back to alchemy and you look back in the past, they can make gold. How do they make gold? Well, if you take the past and the present, it equals the future. So you take the past 2 minerals, put your currents through it, and actually create gold because it's moving through the octaves. And we're the same. We start at a low level and we're evolving through that level. And when we get to the end of the level, then we're ready to evolve into the next level and dimension. So our world is a constant movement of energy, and everything in nature is alive. And that includes our thoughts. What people don't realize is that Mother is the earth. She gives birth, Gaia gives birth to all living things on the planet. But you can't have birth without the father. Now, I don't like religion because of what it's done to our communities. But I will say one thing, that religion was based on law, L-O-R-E, which is the knowledge of the universe. But it's been hijacked. Now, what takes place is that if you go in religion, they call it the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Well, the Father is the Son, holy above, and another word for ghost is spirit above. It's a ball of light of the next dimension of the fractal, or the hologram. Now, it gives out in the form of electrons. Now, those electrons are free-flowing. We, by the very act of our thought, we capture these electrons around this little nucleus, and that becomes a thought form. It now locks in, external to internal, and becomes part of the soul. Now, it gets programmed. Now, what happens? The thought becomes a thought form, and it becomes a life form. And the universe steps in. The universe says, hang on, you can't destroy this. It's a life form. You're the host. So what happens is that life form is now surviving in you. And it's going to reproduce itself in you. And it's going to set you up in you. And you react to it. And your reaction feeds it, and it's learning. It's becoming intelligent. So as the thought becomes a thought form, becomes a life form, it's evolving, and eventually as you keep feeding it, it learns enough about you by action reaction that evolves to the next level, and it becomes an internal entity, and it can take over. Then we have compulsive disorder, bipolar, schizophrenia, all these labels you want to put on it, but it's really a life form in another dimensions, part of you, which now is trying to affect the fractals of you, which is a hologram of you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know through my own work, thought form entities, how people can create them and they can kind of stick on other people if someone's obsessing over someone, jealousy, and it can create that, what you're talking about, that distortion.
That's right. It's alive. And once you've created it, it's just doing what nature provides, and it's seeking its own survival. But it only knows the program. So it's running the program, but the only person who changed the program now is your spirit. There's a difference. You see, just like you got a forward, you got a backward, you got a left, you got a right, you got a high, you got a low. Everything external to internal becomes part of the soul and locks into your cells. Now, the soul is reproducing the program. Now, the moment of conception, spark of life that gives you life, is the spirit enters. It's linked to the heart. Now, once it's linked to the heart, there's your spark of life, and now the body is growing, and it is the internal being in a new vehicle. Now, your spirit's here for you. It says, tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. But I've got no right to make changes without your authority. So, because you're hanging on to all these programs that link to your soul, I assume that you must want them. So I'll allow them to take place because you haven't told me otherwise. So when you start telling the spirit what you want, it says, okay, I'll rearrange the universe for you. And it rearranges the universe. It can manifest realities. It's unbelievable when you start working this area. And our whole process is understanding that our ancestors lived this way for 60,000 years. But most of that knowledge has been forgotten because what they did, they came in, they took away the children, and known as stolen generation. When they took away the children, the knowledge was passed from father to son, from his son to his son, from his son to his son. And sometimes the grandfather would incarnate as a grandson and continue with the knowledge through time. So that knowledge was passed down for thousands of years. Most that's been lost today because there's no one to pass it to, because when they took away the children, and that's what's known as the white Australian policy. So the white Australian policy is the government says, well, here's a half caste, here's a quarter caste, here's 8 caste. Now look, we've bred it out of them. Well, I'm part of the white Australian policy. My ancestors were Aboriginal, but as you can see, my skin's lighter because they've bred it out of the system, but you can't breed out the spirit. And with the spirit is the knowledge, which is in the blood. And it's the knowledge that I've been born with that I understand. I've just taken it totally further by over 50 years of research, understanding the science behind it, how to apply it, and how to move in, which I never expected. I just expected to make changes to mental health, but it's gone far beyond that, far beyond that. You know, we are doing things where we can change physical reality. We can do things where we can go in and not only can we change mental health, but we're following on and we're making massive changes by changing invisible in the physical. The changes are physical because everything first is first invisible, then it comes into visible. So our system today is totally looking at the visible and trying to change the visible without looking at the invisible.
Yeah, it's all third dimensional, isn't it? Like I've long time thought that, you know, all these labels that they put out there, you know, schizophrenia and all that, it's, you know, they give you a pill, but there's something much deeper going on, which is where your work goes into, isn't it?
Oh, look, we've been in high security prisons for people classified as mentally insane. One session, they've been released. We were up the coast only about a month ago, and we got a phone call from one of the mental health units, and they said, look, we're desperate. We've tried everything with this woman. She's suicidal and depressed, and we don't know what to do anymore. Would you come and do a session? So we went out to the mental health unit there, did a session in the mental health unit on her. She's released 2 days later.
Wow.
And that's common. That's common. Because what it is that our culture, when you go and you have a look at the Royal Commission that we had, and this goes back 20 odd years ago, and the Royal Commission stated Aboriginal people are not mentally ill, they're spiritually ill. We need to heal the trauma of the spirit, but nobody's healing the trauma of the spirit except us, because we understand what we do and how to access it and how to do that.
Yeah.
So the areas we're covering, as I said, we're working on children. Like we had a little 8-year-old boy the other day. Mummy, I don't want to die when I'm 18. I don't want to die when I'm 18. She's not going to die when you're 18. Yes, I am, Mum. I'm going to die when I'm 18. No, you're not. So he's persisting and died at 18. So she brought him down to him. We put him on the table. His spirits took him straight back to a past life, 18 years old. What's happening? I'm a soldier. What's happening? I'm going to war. What's happening? I'm in a plane. What's happening? The plane shot down. Okay. So as the plane's going down, how do you feel? I'm terrified I'm going to die. Bang, hits the ground. He's stuck in that moment of time. It's brought through time. We unfold time and space. We put him outside time. We change the dimension, and instantly, the issue's gone. And we work with kids all around the world and getting surrogate changes.
So you're going back just into past timelines, because everything exists at the same time anyway, doesn't it?
Well, there's the variables to the degree that we have the genetic line. So down here is your generational line. So the epigenetics is only what's being passed in through the genetic line, down the genetic line. But beyond the epigenetics, we have the generational trauma that's come through time. So when we had a little boy the other day, alcohol fetal syndrome. Now, little boy, he's only 8 years old, alcohol fetal syndrome. It goes back to his grandmother. So we bring the grandmother through. The grandmother's talking to our little boy on the table, and they came and took away the children. So she hit the bottle. Now, when she died, she jumped into her daughter. Now, the daughter became an alcoholic. So the grandmother's in there and the daughter, they're both alcoholics, getting their drink, but the baby's born in there, and it comes out of alcohol fetal syndrome. We brought the grandmother through. The little boy's sitting up and the grandmother's talking at him on the table. We send her back in time. We unfold time and space in that dimension. We change the dimension to the future and release that little spirit that's trapped in her, and we change the mother's programming, which he was part of the hologram of. When we finished, you couldn't believe that little boy had alcohol fetal syndrome. The change was so drastic. Because you've got to understand we're multidimensional beings. And you've got to understand first everything is in the invisible, and it transmutes through the visible. And you've got to change the invisible if you want to change the visible. Yeah. And nobody's doing that. They're just dumbing you and numbing you with medication. But the thing is, the medication they dumb you and numb you with, to dumb you and numb you means they're going to lower your resistance. Now, the moment they lower your resistance, you're vulnerable for these other beings out there to jump you. And you're worse than you were. Because our world is full of multidimensional beings. And mind you, don't let the government turn around and say, oh, this doesn't exist. Well, we've actually got a photo here that I could show you of a baby, and the baby is inside the mother's womb. Now, what happened is the mother had a scan, and she said, what's this in here with my baby? And one of my students contacted, so I contacted the mother, and I got a photo of the mother. And I'm just going to show you this photo, just to give you an idea what's going on out there. Because a lot of children are taken over by these beings that can invade the human body as a young child. And when they take over and they're running the child, then the child itself starts doing it. You hear mothers sometimes say, my child's turned a little monster. And they're jokingly saying it, but they don't realize the words that they're saying. So what takes place is that this little child, as it grows, and this thing with the child, it grows 3 times faster than the child itself.
Wow.
So what then takes place is, as this is growing faster and faster in the child and bigger in the child, it gets to the stage where eventually it becomes 8 to 10 foot tall and can take over the little child. Wow. Now you hear the child, why'd you do that? I didn't do it, mummy. It wasn't me. Something made me do it. And we often hear that saying, something made me do it. Now, every man that's virtually gone, nearly every man's gone berserk with a gun in America, go and listen to what they've said when it comes to a court case. Somebody took over, it wasn't me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, these beings are real, and your governments are aware of it. But what are they doing? They're doing absolutely nothing. Now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but have a look at this thing. Hang on, I'll get it back and see if we can see it.
Yeah, it's a bit, oh yeah, I can see it. It's like a dark shadow, right?
Yeah, okay, there's the baby there. See the baby?
Yeah, see the baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now look at the thing down here, a gargoyle in there with a baby.
Yeah, I see.
Hey, see him? See him?
Yeah.
And they grow up with the children, and they take over the children. We clear them all the time out of kids. And they take over, and the kids doing things they have no control over. Now let's go back to Vietnam. In Vietnam, when they put 18-year-olds on the helicopter gunships, and they sent them out over Vietnam, and they put these photon night scopes on them. And they're looking across the jungle at night, and they see what they think are snipers in the trees, and they open fire with the machine guns. And the next thing, these things are attacking the helicopters. and these young guys are going berserk because they're signaling each other. You go around here, you go around there, these beans, and they end up shooting down other helicopters. At first, I thought it was too much heroin and cocaine. But after happening a few times, they started putting the cameras inside the infrared goggles that are based on photons because they actually saw in other dimensions. And what they captured were these 8 to 10 foot beings with wings and demonic features in another dimension. They're attacking them. Well, that's what these beings grow up to be in another dimension.
Yeah. Well, it makes
stop and have a look.
Well, doesn't it? Because war is all like suffering, low vibrational energy, all that stuff that those beings would feed on. So you can imagine that there would be all these interdimensional entities that are in a war zone as well, like feeding.
And spirits. Look, I've dealt with your soldiers. I've dealt with soldiers around the world from Somalia, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and a few other places around the world. And we've actually got a 95% success rate in one session clearing your soldiers. Why? You've got to understand what our culture understood. Now, watch this. Before I made a canoe in the old days, I'd go to the tree and I'd ask the spirit of the tree if I can cut it down. If it said no, then I'd go to the next tree. If it said no, I'd go to the next tree. Or sometimes that tree would say, that tree over there, he's ready. So I go to that tree, and that tree, the spirit of the tree will say, excuse me, yeah, I'm ready to move on. So they cut that tree down to make the canoe out of that tree. Now, before they killed an animal, they'd sit around what's known as the dream time at night, and they put out the spirit of the animal to donate its vehicle. And next day, there's your lunch. If you went out and you killed an animal without permission, you violated law. And that animal has a right to continue living in your body, and it can jump the body. And when it jumps the body, we have people with Tourette's, barking like a dog and clucking like a chicken. We go and take out the animal's spirits, no more barking like a dog or clucking like a chicken. And let's go to war. You go to war and you kill somebody who's not going to kill you, you violate law. And that spirit has a right to jump you. Now, we have spirits 40 years after Vietnam War on the table, and we have spirits of Viet Cong speaking Vietnamese out of the body. We send them back in time to find out what took place. We change the past and the present for the future and release the spirits, and instantly no more mental trauma. I worked in soldiers from Iraq on mental trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, and fired a mortar into a village, blew up a house, killed 3 people. Those 3 spirits were in him. I've worked on airmen in Vietnam dropping napalm, 1,000 spirits in them. You've really got to understand the game of this universe.
It's almost like those soldiers that bypassed that law you're talking about, stamped all over their rights in terms of just firing at them. The spirit just jumped in on them and kind of possessed them in a way. What
it is if you destroy that vehicle, in other words, that spirit's come here for 60 years and you cut him short at 20 years. He has a right to continue living in your body. He can jump you. Now, he's full of so much anger and rage. The moment you take any drugs or alcohol, your defenses are down, he can take over. Shoot the wife, shoot the kids, blow his brains out. He's got the soul for the future.
So he's got to understand the game of that soul within him then. Basically.
Yes, and it can capture his soul. You've got to understand why rituals exist in the first place. Rituals were about cutting out the heart. Look, there were many wars in the past, and you go and research, and they'd cut the heart out and they'd eat it because that was capturing the spirit. It gives you more power. He's really angry in there, more anger and more power. But the moment you drink alcohol in your defense, that spirit can take over.
Yeah.
And once you take over, he's in control. And this is why what we find with a lot of our communities today and the violence in our communities today, we go back and we find that I've had Aboriginal tape, I'm talking blacker, past life. One's a Scotsman, one's an Irishman, one's a light horseman, and the wars are in. Now, what happens is today, you go back in the past and you're shooting Aborigines, those spirits will jump the body. Now you die, and what happens, the universe steps in and says, oh, okay, so you white fella like shooting black fella, you come back as a black fella. So now you come back, as an Aborigine, but those spirits are in your field still. So the moment someone's drinking around you, they come into your field, that spirit can jump them and use that body to bash the daylights out of you. This is why there's so much violence in our communities, because we've really got spirits that have never cleared the unresolved issues of the past that's taking place. You're going to find it in the Indian community, you're going to find it up in the Inuits in Canada. All around the world, there's been major wars where they've come in and taken out tribes. Those spirits are still stuck in time thousands of years later. They need to be cleared. We need to clear time, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, no, fascinating stuff. So just how did you, like you said you were kind of born with this knowledge, how did it all start for you on this path?
Well, first off, let's go down the genetic line here of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my great-grandmother at 8 years old was taken away by Aboriginal Protection Agency. No, it's stolen generation. They found her in horse shackles at the age of 14 because they couldn't control her. She'd run away all the time. So they sold her off to a drover. And at 15, she died giving birth to my grandmother. So there's the first half caste.
Mm.
Now, my grandmother never had a mother. So the maids, the servants, the butlers, the gardeners, the elders, and the clever men took her under the wing and they taught her the old ways. As she grew up, she talked about the old ways. Now take the spirit. My spirit comes in. At the age of 4, I was fully aware of the past. I was telling my mother the future because it all happened before. And I was aware of accessing the past. And at the time, I remember she sat me down and said, how do you know these things are happening? And I said, well, doesn't everybody remember the past? And she said, no. Well, I did. I fully recall. I was an old clever man of the past. I remember all the old ways. So as I grew up, by the time I was 8 years old, I could turn a tap on and make water go around my finger without touching it. By the time I was a teenager, I was doing mind magic, but no one ever taught me. I want to know, what am I doing? How am I doing it? How do I know this? How can I do these things? And I've spent 50 years researching to understand our old ways, but the science behind our old ways. And it is a science. We as a culture didn't understand it as a science. We just knew we could do it. But as a science, it is a science. Yeah. And when you apply the science of the laws of how this universe works, and you apply them, they work. Because it's part of this knowledge, this universe. That's what law, L-O-R-E, is universal knowledge.
So that version of law, L-O-R-E, the Aboriginal version, is it the same as what we would call natural law? Do no harm, cause no loss. These
are part of the laws of the universe because it has its own laws. And to understand that, the universe has to have laws. If it didn't have laws, we'd have a universe of chaos. So it has the laws. Now, when you understand these laws cover every dimension. Now, to understand dimensions, we live in one skinny little beam, one skinny fine beam called visible light. But above that, you go up into the ultraviolet, the gamma rays, X-rays, cosmic photons, below it, infrared, radio waves, TV waves, gamma trigger, plant technology, all brain technology, beta, alpha, theta, delta, brain waves, down the bottom. But each above and below are other frequencies of waves. I believe there's life on every planet out there in its own dimension. We only see visible light. So we look at everything in visible light. But if I go to the observatory and I look out in space through telescopes, I see galaxies on top of galaxies on top of galaxies. But wait, if I go and I look through the infrared telescopes, I now see galaxies on top of galaxies that you don't see in the normal telescope because I'm looking to another dimension.
Interesting. Yeah. And so you say that everything's on its own path of evolution. So effectively,
yes. In its own dimension.
As a human spirit, would we have maybe started as like a rock and then just gone all the way up through all the...
We did. We started in the firmament, then we started as the gases, then we started the liquid, then we started the rock, then we started the plant life, the insect life, the animal life, and the human life, and we're evolving through. Sometimes we've had humans go back to animal life. I remember one of our students one day, she got a horse, and she said, my horse is human, knows what I'm saying, but there's something wrong with it, it's got a problem. So we surrogated the horse in. And the first thing the horse said to me was, my brother bashed me and I died. I said, I beg your pardon? My brother bashed me and I died. I said, what do you mean your brother bashed you and you died? Who am I talking to? The horse. So what do you mean your brother bashed you and you died? Well, that's what happened. He bashed me and I died. I said, why did you come back to the horse? Because they're big and strong and no one will bash me. Well, that made sense to me. And we bring animal spirits through all the time because what's happening is right now, we have a lot of humans that were animals in the past are already evolving, starting now already, coming through in the last 10 years, many, but their trauma is still online. The first time we ever discovered that, we weren't aware of it fully. And we had a young boy in a mental institution and his eyes are weeping all the time. So I went to find out why his eyes are weeping. And the first thing up was cheetah. I said, I beg your pardon? Cheetah. I said, what do you mean cheetah? Like a tiger, a big cat. Am I speaking spirit of a cheetah? That's right. What's happening? I'm walking through long grass. And what's happening? I got like grass seed in my eye. What happened? I couldn't get out. What happened? It sprouted. I went blind. I died. I thought, what's that to do with the boy? Spirit boy, come forward. Spirit boy, go back to when your eyes started playing up. 13. What's happening? I'm smoking dope. Thank you. And what's happening? The smoke and the dope's irritating my eyes. I didn't realise back in those days, 30 years ago, that the cheetah has evolved into the boy up the scale, but it's still got the trauma in the eyes that it comes through. Never been cleared.
Mm.
Do you understand?
Yeah. So it's almost like, and I've done a slight different variation of what you're talking about, but it's almost like what's happening in society is everyone is kind of shouting at the movie, hoping the movie will change, when in actual fact we need to go behind and change it from the projector, and then the movie changes, right?
That's correct, because and there's also, the interesting thing is today, we're evolving. I mean, I've been doing this now 50 odd years, researching over 50 odd years. I've been doing a whole lifetime, really. I mean, I'm 73 years old and I've been doing this for a lifetime, and we're still learning new things constantly. We're just learning new things now to take the students to another level of it, which is only coming in recently. So it's a time of endless learning, but it's only when you get to the level of understanding that level that you're at, the universe will unfold the next level to you. Mm. It's a progression of lifetimes of learning to get up to those levels.
Yeah.
And this is where we are today. You know, we are looking at so many new areas. We're looking at physical reality, and how do we get people to change? One of my students, he's doing a great job now with people in wheelchairs. They've never been out of wheelchairs. And what they're doing is they're talking to, the muscles, and they're giving memory back into the muscles, activating the muscle memories. Mm. And these people, in a very short period of time, are getting out of their wheelchairs at the gym, and they're getting up and they're moving, and they've never been out of a wheelchair before.
Yeah.
It's just taken to another level.
Because, the mainstream would pass that off as woo-woo, but everything has its own consciousness, even our own body parts, right? Our
That's
arms,
correct.
Legs, and, I've done it before. Like when I'm ill, I talk to, areas of my body, and I feel better for it, But,
I mean, it's like when you can take, as a universe, and you are a universe of your own, but just like our world itself here, in our universe, we have all these different planets. Well, in this universe of yours, you've got a liver, a kidney, a heart, a lung. Each one has its own role in this universe of you, and each one plays its own role for the whole. But each one has its own memory of what its role is to do. Now, we've even gone advanced, and we've done some advanced stuff with people. We had 2 cases now where people were caught in massive fire. One of them was one of our top students in England, and got a phone call while we were teaching over there, and her best girlfriend, her partner, works for the gas company, and they had a gas leak, and they'd got a big Kato in, dug a hole, and he's down in the hole. The next minute, boom, the explosion went 40, 50 feet in the air, and he was inside it. Rushed to hospital, 80 degrees burn through his body. She rang us. So we put him straight on the table. Then stop and think for a moment. We know that we can take stem cells from the spine and inject it into your organ, and it reproduces that organ. So what's it tell me? There's got to be a blueprint. If I build a house, there's a blueprint. So what we did is we get spirit to access that blueprint, laid the blueprint over the skin, and we go in and we talk the blueprint, change the blueprint back to its original course. Within a month, doctors can't believe he doesn't need a skin graft. 2 months, and he's got on holidays. We've done it twice now with people. We would love to get our trained practitioners into burns units to work on kids that are coming in, because we believe we can make changes to it, because everything is alive and you can talk to it. And our system doesn't talk to anything.
No.
If anything, it might say, you've only got 3 months to live. It just told you got 3 months to live, and you're going to go away and die in 3 months.
Yeah, well, that does something straight away to the psyche, doesn't it? It's like the body kind of gives up. Even that word, when people get told, just using that word cancer, it's like it just strikes fear in people, doesn't it?
That's right. It's a program.
That's always normally an expression of some kind of trauma that's not been dealt with, right? It's always some kind of emotion that's there.
And what it is it locks into separate parts of your body. We've had 10 clients with cervic cancer, and every single one of them went back in time, and it was sexual abuse. Well, the sexual abuse, the stress point was in the cervic region. We go back and we change the dimension, clear the dimension, and then we treat the cancer as an entity. We go and we take him out. Within 2 weeks, every single one of them cancer's disappeared.
Mm.
So we find it goes to different parts of the body. And, you know, we find the breast area is a lot of time women don't like themselves as females. Got
Yeah.
female issues online. It goes to breast. We've
And
found,
also with
listen to words sometimes. I felt sick in the stomach. Stomach cancer,
yeah.
bowel cancer. It's hanging on.
And
You've got
also,
to find
I
the dimension.
heard with breast cancer, it's like women self-loathing or not feeling good enough, but also if they allow themselves to be like used by lots of men, you know, because they've got low self-worth, because it's like the breast is, you know, the motherhood part, it's being abused, and then that causes the cancer.
Well, it's the breast part is the femininity part of the being, and they really don't like the feminine. They may not like what they've been doing. They may not like what they've set up for themselves as a female, and they don't like themselves. And that's where it's going to be attracted. You see, energy can only be captured through stress. So you need to find the stress point in the body to capture that energy. Now, a lot of time we'll go back and the emotion might be 3 years old, but then we come up the body to the stress point, and it could have been at 20, it could have been at 18. And this is the same as pain in the body. Pain is only trapped energy, but it came from somewhere. So spirit tells us where it came from, then we move up line to the stress point. Now we find the stress point. It could have been, you know, playing football and something happened. It could have been a car accident and something happened. The life form, once created, needs to find a home in the body. It goes to stress point. That becomes the home. Now it's going to reproduce that area and keep the pain going in that area. That's all it knows. Its own survival, and it wants to settle down in its own home. So that muscle or that organ becomes a home of the life form.
Yeah, and there's always a message behind it, isn't there? There's always, because the pain itself is conscious, I guess. And so.
Yeah, well, it had to have a stress point to capture it in the first place. The only way you can capture any energy is through stress. Look at a steam engine. We're in a steam engine. Boom, boom, boom. The steam, the wheels are turning in a steam engine. It's building up pressure and exploding, building up pressure and exploding at the stress point. And this is the same. We need a stress point to activate.
Yeah, and I guess because so many of us are walking around with these stress points from not only this lifetime, but previous lifetimes, it's all coming to a head, isn't it?
If you've never cleared with in the last lifetime, then you're going to bring it through and set it up. Now, we've found a mathematical formula for this. And if I wanted to, say, measure the radius, take a circumference, and I want to measure the circumference, which is a dimension, but dimensions are growing through time, bigger and bigger and bigger. If I want to measure that dimension, I take the radius multiplied by pi r squared, which is 22/7, which is really 7/7. I call 7/7 not 3 1/7, but I call it 3.5 to be on the safe side. And I can pretty well guarantee if something came in the first 3.5 years, you set it up. Now we'll go back in time to see what you did to set it up. Example, if you're born to violent parents, I can pretty well guarantee back in time you were violent to your kids or violent to someone in the past, and you had to come back to experience that violence on yourself. We send people back in time to show them what they did if it comes through in that first 3.5 years. If it comes through in the first 7 years, then that's death trauma. Now we have doctors in the children's hospital constantly saying, we have no idea what's wrong with half the kids in here. And my comment is, that's because they bring death trauma through in the first 7 years and set it up.
Right.
It's like a little 8-year-old boy. I don't want to die. I'm 18. He brought the death scene through of his death before 7, set it up. Now it suffers a pattern and the constant fear, and eventually would have manifested death at 18. Do you understand? Till we change the dimension.
Yeah. So, literally going back in time. So what's in terms of entity attachment, are they getting in, because the way I see entity, it's multifaceted. They either get in on some kind of trauma or some kind of unhealed wound or blind spot that we have. What's your opinion on entities, reptilians, and all that?
Okay, each have a role. The internal entity is created by your very act of a thought of what you're hanging on to, and you keep feeding. And internally, it evolves from the thought to a thought form to a life form where it can take over And once it takes over, we have compulsive disorder, bipolar, schizophrenia. You have no control because you've now created internal entities taking over. Now we have the external entity. One day you may say, that's it, I've had enough, and you let go of him. He's out there on the loose. He needs a body of similarity of whatever created him. So he comes an external. So you can take on an external entity that's out there just by a thought process. You take him on. Then you've got the gargoyles. Well, that little kid just there we just showed you, the gargoyle of the child. Now, a lot of children are getting taken over by these beings. Now, what they do is they grow 3 times faster than the child, and they're sucking the energy of the child as they're growing and manipulating the child. As they get older and they're getting bigger, they have the child doing things they have no control over. I don't know why I did it, Mummy. Something made me do it. And you're hearing it all the time. But they're growing bigger and bigger and bigger. As they get bigger, now they can grow up to, well, we know of up to 15 foot tall, some of these beings in the field of and they can take over. And they become the big winged serpents. They're a very hierarchy, very powerful beings. Now, if you go back and you look at every single person in America that went berserk with a gun, every single one of them was on medication. Because the medication lowers your resistance where you cannot fight these forms off that can jump you. You're vulnerable to them. They jump you. We had a Torres Strait Islander recently, and he rang me. He said, I was doing work in my garden the other day. I caught this thing out of the corner of my eye, turned, and there was this massive 8 to 10 foot thing up in the trees. And the moment I spotted it, it attacked me. He said, and because he'd done my course, one of my students up there, and he said, I was fully aware of what it was as it dived down, and as it tried to jump the body, it just bounced off my body and kept going. My comment is, because you're aware, this thing couldn't get in. If you weren't aware and you're on alcohol or drugs, and the wormhole's open, bang, he's jumped you. He's in there now feeding off you and manipulating you.
Yeah.
Now you got the draconians. Now, the draconians are virtually running our world. They control religion. They have been through time. They control the military. They control, politicians. The moment these politicians go into the game of another, he who enters the game of another is subject to the laws of the game. They're taken over. These beings are running our world today. But wait, this is our world, and they're coming from another dimension into our dimension. Therefore, they're governed by the laws of our dimension, and we can deal with them. We deal with them all the time. We're taking these things out all the time. And some of them, they'll throw bodies and contortions on the table, screaming and yelling at us and spitting at us because they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
So the whole range of beings out there in other dimensions, they all have their role.
Yeah, so essentially because they're kind of attacking us, we've got full right just to get rid, right?
And to understand the keys, nothing can enter your space unless you let it in. So how do we do that? We go and get drunk. We go and we take drugs. We go and we do rituals. We call things in through all these different initiations and rituals, and even prayer can bring things in.
A lot of the stuff in the New Age scene now as well. I work with a lot of people. They've they're dealing with archangels and aliens, and they're coming like all their energy's messed up, and so consent is one of the main things.
And if you really, I have a laugh sometimes because I see all these people going out and doing these things and calling Archangel and calling Gabriel and Michael and all these in. Go back and research history. And if you're going back and you research history, and it's all in Sumerian text, it's there back in time, and even in their own Bible. Remember Moses and the bulrushes, and he was put in a little canoe sent downstream. Well, the reason he was done that, because there was a war took place with this planet, another planet out there, and this planet was virtually destroyed. And when the big mothership came back, and she found that the planet had been destroyed, and they landed here, their men hadn't had R&R for a while, so they were told not to mix with these low hybrid humans. So what they do? They had an R&R, so they went out and interbred. When the commander found out he was ropeable, and that particular patrol officer was put to death, stoned to death. And then they sent out one of his men with a team, and that was Gabriel. Michael and Gabriel ETs. And they were sent out to find every boy child and put him to the sword, because when these beings integrated, they created demigods. It's there in history. Yeah. People just don't understand the history, and they're calling these beings in. They're ETs.
I know. It's so clever how they've set it up, though, because it all looks so, love and light on the surface. And they're very clever at masquerading.
They've had thousands of years. They've had thousands of years to manipulate time and space.
Yeah.
But the key is law. Nothing can get into your field unless you let it in, and anything comes from another dimension to this dimension is governed by the laws of this dimension. It's like you have people out there that do initiation rituals and they're channeling, or people taking drugs, and they open wormholes through into that dimension. because they enter their dimension, they have a right now to what's known as reciprocal exchange of energy to come into this dimension and take over the body.
Mm. We see that in the physical world as well, don't we? It's all by tacit, it's by consent. You know, we sign
That's correct.
Contracts for credit cards, for mortgages, for everything. You know, if we agree to it, then, like you say, I guess that's the law that you talk of. Then it's fair game if we agree to it, if we call it in, if we allow it, if we sign for it.
And you can go beyond that. You know, in other words, you can look at the game that's structured out there. Just take a credit card, because they're trying to get rid of cash totally, so everything's on credit. But if you put money into your credit card, so your credit card's not on a credit card, and really they reverse the process, because a credit card's really a debit card, and a debit card is really a credit card when you think of it. Do you understand? But they reversed everything, you see. Yeah. So if you put money on your credit card, so you're never in credit. The money's always there ahead of you.
Mm.
But you're not in that game of the borrowing game, because their aim is to indebit you into the indebit entity of the future. In other words, I die owing $300,000. I'm in their game in the next cycle of time, because I still owe them through the agreement. Do you understand? It's a subtle game of manipulation that's been taking place through time.
Yeah. And
you've got to look at the newest things. Oh my God. Oh, I just came back from Canada, and I went through Toronto, and the highway going through Toronto, I could not believe what I was seeing. I'm seeing these, 30, 40, 50-foot high rises on top of each other, mile after mile after mile. Some of the high rises are just concrete buildings that they haven't even painted, and there's mold all over them. Yeah. These are ghettos of the future. But wait, they're not just ghettos of the future. They're getting you, because that's all you can afford, these units, free will choice to buy these units. And they're concentrated units, which are concentrated cities, which are concentrated camps of the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Smart cities. Everyone's going to be hooked in on the internet. Yeah.
And eventually what happens is you won't need a car, because they'll be supplied in that little city. It's a compact little city. But then all of a sudden a virus will be created. And everybody in the city is going to have to be inoculated.
Mm.
You've got to understand the game.
Yeah.
They're trying to bring inoculation in for all humans right now. Even now, I heard in Europe the other day that they're going to put on your passport the inoculations you've had on your passport.
No.
So certain countries won't be allowed to go to certain countries if you haven't had it in your passport. You've got to look at the game. They're culling. Remember, you've got to look at Agenda 21, which has been moved to Agenda 25. And Agenda 21 was to wipe out half the world's population.
Mm.
How are they doing it?
Wars, poison in the foods.
Inoculations.
Inoculations, yeah. Yeah.
Go and have a look at Africa, what's happened in Africa. All the stuff that's in Africa, what are they doing? Look at the Gardasil injection they're giving the girls. I've had girls, their best friends have committed suicide. I've had clients that have had a Gardasil injection, can't even get out of bed. There's no desire to anything. The Gardasil's supposed to be there for cervic cancer. But what it is, it's about stopping their reproduction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they're doing that through the nanotech and all that stuff that's coming through there. And yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's so much going on at the moment, and, we're just starting to kind of peel back the layers, as it were, in terms of all this stuff. So what would you say are the solutions to move us forward out of this entrapment that we're in? I mean, obviously understanding and awareness is key, but what would be your ideas on where?
Well, I think most people, I feel the first thing you've got to do is, you see, one thing we discovered is that the first thing takes over most humans is going to be ego.
Mm.
And then the ego comes to programs, and then the programs are taking over, and the ego's allowing the programs to take over. What we need to do is let go of the ego. What we need to do is to center ourselves. And what we need to do is to align ourselves at point zero. Point zero is the point of the observer.
Mm.
Now, if we need to go to nature and sit down in nature on bare feet on the ground, just sit there and listen to nature. Listen to the tree. Listen to nature. Silence the mind. And once we can silence the mind, we can silence the entities and the life forms in us. And once we can silence the mind, we can get to point zero. And once we get to point zero, we become the observer of the game without reacting to the game.
Mm.
Most people today are in reactive mode and they're reacting to the games constantly, but they're not there at point zero and observing the game, non-reactive. The moment you can observe the game without reacting to the game, you're in control.
And that's not to mean not to take action. It's just to mean don't get emotionally tied into it all.
Everybody out there is playing games and everybody's trying to suck you into their game. You know, as I said to my student, we work with students and we clear them, and especially a lot of ones been on drugs. I mean, some of people have they've been walking chemist shops, the amount of stuff they've been on. We clear them up. And I say, the universe is going to put you through a test. I say, well, the next few days, people you've never seen before, you haven't seen for years, are going to come out of the woodwork. Come and have a joint with me. You watch the manipulation of the entities as they try to get back to you into the game again.
Yeah, they'll try and hook you back in. They know all your weak spots, don't they? They know all your
problems. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've had that.
So, and this is where, when you become aware, like, you see it, and you have a chuckle to yourself. Oh, that's interesting.
It's interesting. I did some psychotherapy, which goes behind with the metaphysical a little bit about what you're talking about. And they actually told me in the course that, you know, if you get trauma come up about a certain person, you know, expect to hear from them in the next few days, because they'll be able to feel it. You know, they'll be able to feel that you know, the stuff that you've been doing, you know. And I was over the other side of the world, and yeah, it came in. You know, the phone calls came in, and it was really bizarre. Everything's linked, isn't it?
Everything's linked and everything's alive. And everything's just seeking its own survival. That's part of nature. You go out into nature and look at nature. You go out in your lawn and you cut, say you got a beautiful green lawn, like a bowling green lawn. Cut 1 square foot out of that bowling green lawn and leave it. And come back in 2 weeks' time. There's always something out there, there's life forms that are going to try and fill the void. And you come back in 2 weeks' time and all of a sudden it's not beautiful green lawn anymore. That 1 square foot, it's liable to be full of anything and everything. Because everything is seeking for space to survive.
Yeah. And I think
you are a universe of your own, and that these things are sometimes seeking for space in you to survive.
Yeah. And what people are doing, because they've got all this trauma they're walking around, they're filling their voids, as you say, with alcohol, drugs and stuff that's going to open them up to more attachments and make it even difficult for themselves.
Well, a lot of the time the attachments are already there, and the attachment's saying, I need a drink so I can take over.
Yeah, that little voice.
I need the drug so I can take over.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And you hear people say, had a great time last night, don't remember a thing.
Yeah.
It was running the body.
Well, that's why they call them spirits, right? It's telling you.
That's it.
It's telling you. That's why I don't understand. But yeah, I've had people that, the real heavy, some of the heavy psychedelics that can really knock you out of your center. They've been fine on the Friday. They've gone out, taken ayahuasca or DMT at the weekend. They're getting suicidal thoughts on Monday. We've got to be really careful of our own energy and our own consciousness, haven't we?
The most powerful of all the entities that we've ever come across is the ayahuasca entity.
Really?
It's the most cunning of all the entities we've ever had. Now, I've never fit one guy, he come in, he's got a list. He sent me the list. He's lost his wife, he's lost his kids, he's lost his car, he's lost his house, he's lost everything. And he comes in, and straight away, once you've been doing this for a while, you can pick up the entity talking out of him. And I pick up the entity. And the entity's trying to convince me and trying to convince him how good his life it is. He's lost everything. But the entity's so convincing that everything's fine. And you hear with these people, they come in. Like we had one class we did, and we had 5 people on ayahuasca in that class. It was the slowest class I ever had. Every couple of, what do I do again? I forgot. What did I say? I forgot. They can't, they're not in control of their thoughts.
Well, it fragments the energy bodies, I think, when you take something like, because it is such a powerful, psychedelic. But it makes you wonder why it's so heavily promoted out there. And it all started with Terence McKenna, didn't it? It makes you wonder, is this another thing that they want people doing to, open themselves up? And
well, it's like this. You take the ayahuasca entity and watch what he does in nature. In nature, he wraps himself around the tree and he strangles his host. He takes over. When you take the liquid form, it's going to do the same thing. But as an entity, it wants to grow. So what's it need? It needs to bring other people into its game so it can grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That's the game.
Interesting.
That's the game. The more people in its game, the bigger and more powerful he's going to grow.
Wow, never thought about it like that. So it's literally like a vine, you know, in the astral, and it's hooking people into its web almost.
It is actually. I've got a photo here, which I can just show you of See how it wraps itself around the tree?
Yeah.
And it eventually strangles the tree. That's its host and takes over. Well, the liquid form's the same. You know, I had a psychologist once, and I was talking at a seminar, and I was talking about, you know, the ayahuasca and the drugs and what they do, certain things. And all of a sudden, a psychiatrist said, or psychologist, "Oh my God, you've just given the answer." I said, "What for?" "I work with alcoholics and drug addicts. And people that take vodka become closet drinkers." I said, "What do you mean by that?" "They'll actually go into a closet in a dark place to drink the vodka." I said, "I didn't know that." "Oh yeah, heaps of them. And vodka's made from potatoes under the ground."
You're joking me.
No. Look at grapes for wine. Outside in the sun, bubbly.
Yeah.
Do you understand there's a link between all things and the substance in all things?
That's fascinating though. I've never looked at those things in that way. But yeah, it makes sense.
It's still alive and it only knows its program. So it's still running the program, you see?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it has 90% water. And we can change. When we did an experiment recently, I'll show you this. This is mind-blowing. And what we did in, just hang on for 1 second. Here we are, here. Now, you've heard of Mr. Masaru Emoto with the water crystals.
Yeah.
Well, like he's died, passed on, and his son's taken over. So his son contacted us recently, and they had a problem with some of the water and what they were doing. And they've heard about HK, and they wanted to know if I come over and teach them in Japan. So I said, "Look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to do an experiment." So what we did in this experiment, I said, "What I want you to do is," I said, "I want you to get a bottle of water and stick it on your desk for me." I said, "What sort of water do you want?" I said, any get tap water will do me, because there hadn't been a problem. They've been having a little problem with their tap, you see, and the water in the tap. So we got the tap water and got him to put it on his desk. I'll just show you this in a second. Now, hang on. I don't know if you can see that or not. Just wait. Let's focus it in. Let's just see if it comes in or not. No, I can't see it.
No.
I'll put it closer and see if it'll fade.
Oh yeah, a little bit. Yeah, can make it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not real good, but there it is. There,
Oh,
it's coming in. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's a little vial of water on their desk in Japan. I surrogate the spirit of the water in, and I asked the water what's wrong with it, and it said there's toxins in the pipe. We need to clear the toxins out of the pipe. So we spoke to a few other things. It's talking to us. And then in the end, we gave it love and appreciation, and we sent it back in Japan. We're in Australia, mind you, and it's in Japan. Yeah. So that was before, that's after, before, that's after, before, that's after. Wow. If we move over here, before, that's after, before, that's after, before, that's after. I'll just swing over the next side over here, because over here, we've got, again, we've got the before and after, the before and the after, before and the after. But this one here, oh, sorry. Yeah, this one here is the interesting one. Now that one there, again, before and after, but look at this one here.
Yeah.
It's virtually showing us the muck in the pipe and the pipe.
Yeah.
Not only is it talking to us, but it's showing us. It's showing us.
That's unbelievable. Really?
Now, what happened is we did that first experiment. Then we did another one with a bottle of liquid. And we did another one. And the water said to us, "Next time you need to take more photos of me and look at me closely." Without saying a word, it influenced them into taking 156 photos.
Wow. Wow.
In 3 stages. We're still working those photos out now. But when we looked at the water and we blew it up and looked at it, we're actually seeing entities in the water.
Oh my God. Wow.
You know? But the water's talking to us. What I'm saying is, just like you have taken on these programs of your soul, everything you've taken on is part of your soul. But I can talk to your spirit and I can change the soul. The soul can't change the spirit. And I can rearrange that dimension of reality. The dirty, filthy creek is the soul. If I can talk to spirit and change the spirit, which changes the soul, then we can turn dirty, filthy creeks around. What I said to them, I said, in the future, I'll surrogate Fukushima in, and I'll send it through a bottle of water on your table so you can look at it and examine it.
That'd be interesting.
And then we'll do things with Fukushima. You see, we're not governed by time nor space. When you're dealing with spirit, spirit's linked to internal hyperspace. It's instantly, it's omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. It's everywhere instantly at the same time. And yet our science aren't looking at this. This is the most advanced, this is the most important thing in history, to understand the multi-dimensions of man, to understand how to make changes to our future. And science tells you, if you want to know the future, go back and look at the past. Because everything is cycles of time. Well, it's the same with man. Every illness is a cycle of time that's come from somewhere. And it's only your spirit can take you back to show you how, where, when, and why you created that dimension of reality.
So
and change it.
It just goes to show why they don't teach this stuff in schools.
That's correct.
Physics and spirit. So it's really, you know, I've really enjoyed this because, you know, so much out there is quite doom and gloom at the moment, but it's really, you know, it really does give you hope that we can just intervene and interact with multidimensional aspects of ourselves, and not only ourselves, you know, water, and, you know, it's really been enlightening. Just before we go, I just want to just talk about your courses and stuff briefly. You've got one in Dallas on November 9th to the 15th, and then Alabama 14th to the 20th. So you're over in the US in the next few months. So
we've got our top US teacher. We'll be teaching those two. We just came back from the US recently in Canada, teaching. We're teaching right now in Australia. You know, we're doing Sydney next week. An expo, and they'll teach in Sydney. Then we're on to Melbourne teaching to an expo, and they're teaching in Melbourne. Then we come back and we're on to Adelaide, and then we've got the Byron Bay on, and then we've got Perth on, and then we've got Brisbane on. So we've got our next 5 months. We're tied up here. Then again, we'll be back over again sometime next year also. But meanwhile, we have a top teacher in America. She's a top teacher, and she'll be teaching what we do. It's very advanced. There's nothing like it in the world. And look, we're making change. One of the mottos we believe is nothing has to be the way it was. We have the ability to change the future. And I'm talking about physical reality as well. Because we go even deeper. Over here, you have a past, present, future deja vu. And over here, you have a past, present, future deja vu. Over here's the past, here's the future. Together here, it changes it to 7. And the 7 represents a change under universal law, which is physical reality. And here we have a past, present, future in the present to examine that. Your last step you took was your past. The one you're in right now is your present. And the next step you take is your future. If you didn't have 3 dimensions of time, you'd be stuck in time. You'd be frozen in time. Do you understand? So deja vu, it's already preordained. It's going to happen now. It's going to happen in the future. But if we in the present go back and change the past, we create from today on a new outcome for the new future.
Wow, what a way to end it. And it's ironic because, you know, how often do you hear people say, "Oh, yeah, but it's always been this way," and it's, you know, you can't change things.
Yes, you can.
So your work's really about yes, you can, and that is fascinating. So if people want to sign up and you know, attend these, do they just go to your website at holographickinetics.com or?
That's correct. That's correct. And contact us from there, and then we'll send the information out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And is there anything else you want to you know, say before we go in terms of your courses or anything?
Look, our courses are very unique and they're very powerful, and we do get results. And this is the beauty of this. If you're going to start doing the course, my thing I say to my students is, as you'll see, once you do this, it's never ending. It's a lifetime work. You're going to start working with spirit, you're going to work with this universe, and it will take you one step at a time to the next level and the next level. And when you're ready, we'll take you to another level, and we'll take you to another level. It's constant. It's really a lifetime of work of understanding, and the universe itself won't turn away and say, here, we're giving you everything.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't understand what you're talking about. You wouldn't understand what you're doing. It has to take you one step at a time. It has to teach you one step at a time. And when you got that basics right, then it can go to another level, to a deeper level. And then you got that right, it takes you to another level. And as I said, today we have people we're getting people out of wheelchairs. We got people epileptic fits. And one session, find the cause, the effect in a lot of these cases, and they never have another fit again. Yeah. Every single thing has a reason to be, but we just have to find the reason to be to where it came from, because many people are stuck in time. Many things have come through time and can affect people today. And we need to look at prisoners. I don't know, Your Honour, why I keep doing the same thing over and over. They're stuck in time. I don't know, Your Honour, whether a few beers is like something takes over. It does. Nobody's listening. The spirit's talking out of the body and giving you keys, but no one's listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that was very enlightening. Really appreciate your time, Steve. I know it's been early there. I'll put all your links in the description below so people can go directly. It's holographic-kinetics.com. And pleasure talking to you, Steve. Keep up the great work, and much thanks to you.
And if they want to email me, they just go steve@holographic-kinetics.com as well.
Perfect. Well,
Thank
you have a relaxed Sunday, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Take care.
Thanking you.